Picture a scene that might feel very familiar to you. You're sitting at the kitchen table. Across from you is a child just staring down at a piece of homework.
Hmm.
And they're visibly struggling to tell the difference between the Hindi letters ka and ka.
Oh, yeah. We have all seen that exact scenario.
Right. You can just see the frustration building, the heavy sighs, the fidgeting, just that total feeling of defeat.
It is heartbreaking to watch, really.
It is, because for this child, language learning has just evolved into an exhausting chore. I mean, it's based entirely on rote memorization. They're just staring at a symbol and trying to force it into their brain through sheer willpower.
And that approach, well, it turns education into a test of endurance rather than an experience of discovery.
Yeah, exactly.
When we rely on rote memorization, we inadvertently train the child to associate the language itself, and really, by extension, the cultural heritage tied to it with stress and boredom. The neurological friction there is immense.
Especially when you consider the actual mechanics of the language they are trying to learn, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hindi is an intensely scientific, perfectly phonetic language. I mean, the sound of each letter and its pronunciation is exactly the same every single time.
It's so consistent.
It is. It operates on the strict logical framework. But if we teach it through rote memorization, we completely strip away that intuitive, logical beauty. We're just asking the brain to blindly swallow information.
Instead of decoding a brilliant system. Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are looking into a transformative educational methodology called Fun to Learn Hindi.
A phenomenal system, truly.
It really is. It was developed by Anjali and Sanghi, and it encompasses these incredibly unique storybooks and a highly structured online training course for parents and educators.
And our goal today isn't just to look at the products, but to understand the underlying pedagogy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
If you are a parent or educator listening, you will want to grab these resources immediately once you hear this. We're going to unpack the cognitive science behind how this specific approach completely dismantles that stressful kitchen table dynamic.
And replaces it with a system that builds lifelong fluency and, actual joy.
Right. It makes me think about how we approach phonetic languages versus non-phonetic ones.
Yeah.
Like rote memorization for a language with bizarre exceptions, like English, is almost like forcing a child to memorize a list of random Wi-Fi passwords.
That is such a great comparison. Yes.
There's no underlying logic, you just have to know it. But a perfectly phonetic language like Hindi, it's more like learning to use a calculator.
Once you understand the formula, you can solve any equation.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this visual method. Because the foundational materials here, the books like Devanagari Ki Kahani and the Hindi Varnamala series for toddlers, they focus entirely on handing the child that formula.
Right, and they do it in a format the brain is actually primed to accept. They introduce the script, Devanagari, alongside the letters, or akshar, the swar for vowels, and vyanjan for consonants.
But they bypass the sterile grid of letters completely. I love this part.
Yes, the visual approach is where this really pivots away from traditional textbooks. The shapes of the Hindi alphabets actually dance out of the shapes of animals, birds, and everyday objects.
Oh, wow.
So the physical curve or line of the letter is visually mapped right onto the illustration of the animal or object that the word starts with.
It's like sneaking healthy vegetables into a delicious fruit smoothie.
Ha, exactly.
The kids are making complex neural connections regarding the letter shapes, and they don't even realize they're studying.
Well, let's examine why that matters from a cognitive perspective. When a child attempts to learn a symbol through rote repetition, they are heavily taxing their short-term working memory.
Right, cramming for a test.
Yes, they might pass that spelling test on Friday, but those neural pathways are fragile. The information is often gone by Monday.
So true.
But the Sanghi methodology employs associative learning. By embedding the physical architecture of the letter into an illustration of an animal within a story, the brain creates multiple robust pathways.
So they aren't just seeing abstract lines. They are seeing a visual they already understand, paired with this new concept.
Precisely. And it's all structured as a story-based poem. So the child isn't reciting a list. They are actively leaning in, constantly asking, "For kya hua?"
What happened next?
Exactly. The narrative framework provides the emotional and sequential glue. The brain links the visual imagery, the auditory rhythm of the poem, and the emotional engagement of wanting to know the outcome.
Which transfers it to deep, long-term memory.
Right. The child just thinks they're engaging with a fascinating story about a bear or a bird, but their brain is mapping complex phonetic decoding skills.
That is so clever. But I want to look closely at what else is happening within those poems, because the source material reveals that these books are doing double duty.
They really are. They act as subtle virtue builders.
Right, because language acquisition is never just about mechanics, is it?
No, it's fundamentally about human connection. And the pedagogy here leverages the language learning process to teach the child how to navigate their social world.
The examples from the very first two letters in the curriculum illustrate this perfectly.
Oh, I love those examples.
Yeah, the poem for the first letter doesn't just drill a phonetic sound. It teaches them how to appropriately address another child when they're meeting for the very first time.
And then the second letter guides them on how to introduce themselves with confidence.
Right. So before they have even finished learning the alphabet, they're being equipped with tools to build relationships.
And it goes further than that. The underlying text consistently weaves in foundational values. It promotes positive thinking, sharing, community living, and respecting elders.
It treats language as a holistic development tool.
Yeah.
But let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
We are talking about materials designed for children as young as 1 or 2 years old.
Yes, very young.
We're asking a toddler to map complex visual letter shapes,
Hmm.
follow a narrative poem, acquire new vocabulary, and de-internalize lessons on community living and self-confidence. Does that not create massive cognitive overload?
That is a very critical observation. It touches on a common pitfall in early childhood education.
It sounds like a lot for a 1-year-old.
It does. But the methodology anticipates this cognitive load. They manage it through a specific mechanism they call the opportunity of repeated reading.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
The key is that the child is never expected to grasp all these layers simultaneously on the first read.
So it's a gradual unfolding.
Exactly. The poems are constructed using highly strategic day-to-day vocabulary. Target words are repeated 2 or 3 times across different contexts.
So the first time a parent reads the book,
The toddler is likely only absorbing the musical rhythm of the rhyme.
okay, that makes sense.
Then maybe the 5th time, they begin mapping the visual of the animal to the letter shape. And by the 20th reading, the contextual virtue like the concept of sharing begins to click.
The repetition strengthens the recall organically. There's no pressure to perform immediately.
Exactly. It completely removes the stress.
But we have to address the role of the parent here. A big portion of the audience interested in passing down this heritage might live abroad. Or maybe they grew up in India but never gained fluency themselves.
A very common scenario.
Right. So how does a parent who cannot confidently read or pronounce Hindi facilitate this highly nuanced reading experience?
The barrier to entry for parents is completely dismantled by the design of the materials. The books integrate English translations and transliterations directly into the text.
So the parent can just read the English letters to make the Hindi sounds.
Exactly. They understand the meaning and read the phonetic sounds using the English alphabet. Plus, the creators provide accompanying audiobooks that model the perfect pronunciation.
That's brilliant. It creates an environment where the parent and child discover the language together.
And it totally removes the parent's anxiety about teaching incorrect pronunciation.
And that parent-child dynamic brings us to the second massive pillar of this methodology. Because a brilliant book is still just a tool.
Right. Its effectiveness depends entirely on the guide.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. The fun-to-learn Hindi ecosystem extends beyond physical books into live, online, train-the-trainer courses.
Designed specifically for parents and educators of kids aged 3 to 15.
It's like being handed the director's script to a play. You aren't just handing your kid a book. You're being trained on how to make the language come alive.
This is where the pedagogy elevates from a product to a comprehensive educational strategy. The online classes focus on empowering the adult through a 6-step foundational fluency framework.
We need to look at how those 6 steps actually function. Step 1 is alphabet mastery, decoding the basic symbols. Step 2 is vowel power.
And step 3 is consonant connections.
Right, and from there it scales up. Step 4 focuses on word building blocks. Step 5 tackles sentence structures, and Step 6 culminates in fluent reading.
It walks the parent through everything from the basic Varnamala to the complexities of the matras, which are the vowel sounds and symbols.
But I have to ask, let's be realistic about modern parenting.
Oh, certainly.
Parents are exhausted. Does handing an already overworked parent a rigorous 6-step linguistic framework just add another massive source of stress?
It's a valid concern, but the outcome suggests the exact opposite.
How so?
Giving an exhausted parent a clear, step-by-step framework actually eliminates the profound stress of uncertainty. When parents try to teach without a methodology, they default to the rote memorization they experience.
Which leads right back to those kitchen table battles.
Exactly. The true genius of this six-step framework is that it focuses heavily on the why behind the structure of the alphabet.
Ah, so it demystifies the language for the adult first.
Yes, when an adult understands the structural logic of the matras, how vowel sounds alter consonant pronunciation, they transfer that logical confidence to the child.
A frustrated parent passes on linguistic anxiety.
Mm.
An empowered parent passes on enthusiasm.
Exactly. And we see that transformation explicitly in the real-world examples. Look at the review from Parole in the UAE.
Yes, she wanted her son to appreciate Indian culture and heritage while living abroad.
Right. And by taking this course, she learned the actual architectural structure of the alphabet. She even realized some of the methods she learned as a child were fundamentally flawed.
Wow, that's eye-opening.
The course gave her actionable daily strategies to get her son away from memorizing and toward actual reading.
And there was a similar story from Swathi, right?
Yes, Swathi in Bengaluru. Her 4-year-old was struggling significantly with basic recognition and the mitras. It was a real point of tension.
But these online classes provided a clear scratch-to-fluency blueprint.
It taught her exactly how to introduce concepts systematically. It removed the pressure cooker environment and replaced it with collaborative bonding.
Which begs the question of sustainability.
What do you mean?
Well, you have a great book, you have an empowered parent, and the initial learning is fun. But learning a language takes years. How does this methodology sustain that momentum when the novelty wears off?
That is where the element of play and gamification really shines. Sustained engagement requires continuous active participation.
Because passive reading eventually gets boring.
Exactly. They sustain momentum by introducing activity books parallel to the course's coloring, crafts, interactive games.
But the structure of the learning journey itself is the coolest part. They use a 9-week challenge called the Learn Hindi easily in a fun way-a-thon.
Yes, it takes that 6-step framework and turns it into an adventure.
Week 1 isn't just learning vowels, it's the vowel voyage.
Then they go on a consonant quest. And eventually they reach the letter link-up. It introduces these micro goals that give constant achievement.
And the psychology there is profound, framing syllables and syntax as quests.
But the most important aspect of this gamification is the ultimate destination. The goal isn't just reading comprehension. The goal is creation.
That distinction is monumental. The source material details incredible success stories of kids making that exact leap.
Like 8-year-old Mira from Chennai.
Yes, she literally used to run away from her Hindi classes. It was a source of active distress. But after engaging with this framework, she isn't just reading fluently.
She is synthesizing her own 2, 3, 4, and 5-letter words.
And then there is 10-year-old Aryan from Pune. He confidently showed his mother his work and shouted, "Mom, I wrote this story myself."
Going from fleeing a subject to voluntarily authoring stories in it is a staggering pedagogical achievement.
It really is the highest echelon of linguistic fluency. Reading is consumption, processing someone else's thoughts. But creation requires total mastery.
When a child like Aryan writes his own story, it proves that the phonetic formula has been completely internalized.
But let me zoom out for a second. In a world hyper-focused on English, which dominates global business and media, why invest this level of joyful, rigorous effort into Hindi?
That is a very fair question.
Why go on the vowel voyage when English seems to be the currency of the modern world?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the dominance of English is exactly why mastering a native language is so vital. Language isn't merely a tool for economic transaction.
No, it's much more than that.
It is the fundamental lens through which we view our history, our familial roots, and our cultural identity. Mastering it shouldn't be a source of fear.
Right.
When a child achieves the ability to read, write, and create in Hindi, it unlocks a profound channel for self-expression and cultural pride that English alone simply cannot provide.
It provides a sense of anchoring.
Exactly. In a fast-paced world, possessing deep fluency in your heritage language gives a grounding sense of self.
It gives them roots so they can confidently branch out. When we synthesize everything we've uncovered today, the sheer effectiveness of the fun-to-learn Hindi methodology is just obvious.
It truly is.
By combining these beautifully illustrated, story-driven books with the empowering step-by-step courses for the adults, it fundamentally solves the friction of language learning.
It completely overwrites that painful kitchen table dynamic with art, gamification, and connection.
It's an ecosystem built on the premise that learning should be a joy. If you're listening to this, you really should dive in, grab these books, and enroll in these transformative courses. Give the children in your lives the gift of language.
And as we wrap up, there is a final, fascinating neurological concept drawn from the source material that is really worth pondering.
Oh, lay it on us.
We established that Hindi is a perfectly phonetic language with zero phonetic variations. Every symbol corresponds to one exact sound, invariably.
A perfect logical system.
Indeed. Once a child's developing brain learns to decode and perfectly pronounce this system through such a joyful method, they essentially acquire a master key.
A master key to what?
Well, if their neural pathways are wired early on to recognize and execute a flawless phonetic structure, could mastering the Hindi alphabet actually rewire a child's brain?
Wait, really? Rewire it how?
By making the acquisition of any other phonetic language in the world exponentially easier.
Wow. So by guiding a child through these beautifully illustrated stories and structured challenges, a parent isn't just teaching them Hindi,
No.
they might be handing them the foundational cognitive blueprint to become a global polyglot. That is an incredibly powerful thought to hold on to. From overcoming the frustration of ka and ka to unlocking the phonetic languages of the world, all built on a good story and an empowered parent.
It really is amazing.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep exploring, and we will catch you next time.